Welcome everyone. Now in this video we are going to continue with the switch statements and we will talk about some more details of the switch statement. So in the previous video we stated that the case value of the switch can be a literal or a constant, but no variables, right? So what does constant means by? How can I make the switch value to be a constant? Let's take a look at this example. So constant variables are the variables that declared as final. Okay. Most of the time the constant variables, they will be declared outside the blocks within the class. Those are known as the static constant variables, which you will also learn them in the future. Okay. Those variables are different than the local variables that you have created so far. See, this variable, I declared it within the scope of the main method. But those three variables, they were declared outside the main method, but in the same within the class. So those variables, since declared as final, they are constant. Okay. So when I create the switch statement, the case values could be those constant variable names that I gave here. Because those variables, it can only have one value. They do have the fixed set of data. Okay. For example, here I created my switch statement. And in the switch statement's expression, let me pass this variable choice. Okay. And I want to create three case blocks for those three options. For option number 1, 2, 3. So when I create my case blocks, I could pass the case value as 1, or I can also pass this constant option 1. Okay. I could pass 1. I could pass 1 as the case value, or I could pass this constant name called option 1. See, this is a case value now. And this case value did not give me any errors. So this is called constant. The case value, it can be a literal or it can be a constant. Constant variables are the variables like this that are declared as final. And when this case block gets executed, I can display this message, option 1 is selected. Okay. And to make sure that the switch statement gets terminated after the execution of this case block, I will give the break statement. Okay. And I could also create my other case blocks for option 2. Option 2. And give the code fragment that are needed within this case block, such as option 2 is selected. Okay. And when you give the constants as the case value, you still have to make sure that the case value is unique. For example, if I try to give the same constant for the next case value, see, it is giving me this compile error now. Because case value needs to be unique all the time. One constant can only be given to the one case value. For the next case value, it needs to be a different constant. For example, it could be 3, right? So this is a literal. And if I want to use constant, I could use this constant to replace that literal. Okay. And of course, if none of those case blocks are going to get executed, I could give the default block at the end. And to print invalid option. Okay. So now if I run this program, whichever constant is matching with the switch statement's expression, that's the case block that gets executed. So apparently, this constant, it is matching with this switch statement's expression. That's why it printed option 2 is selected. And did you see that I'm also getting warning at line 23? But I did not get any warning in any of those case blocks bodies. Because here we do have the same print statement as the second case blocks. Here it's supposed to be option 3 is selected. This is 2 and this is 3. Let's run the program again. Okay, so we got option 2 is selected. So this is one thing that you need to know about the case value. And also, we stated that when we create the case blocks, we will use column. Okay. Ever since Java 8, even before Java 8, we only had this column to define the scope of the case block. But since the Java version 14, switch allows us to use the lambda arrows to define the case block. Okay. So for example, suppose that here I have this switch statement. It is taking this in as the expression, this number. And this switch statement, it contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 7 case blocks. If you notice here, the case 6 and 7, they are declared back to back because they need to execute the same code fragment. You could group multiple case blocks by using this comma here, and we just need to use one case keyword. So whenever this number is matching with one of those case blocks, then those code fragment gets executed. Otherwise, if the number is not between 1 to 7, it will print invalid number. So basically, this is the switch statement that can display the day name, right? And now, I'm using the column to define the scope of every single one of those case blocks. Okay. And since Java 14, instead of column, we could use the lambda arrow. Switch allows us to use the lambda arrow for the case blocks. If you are using the lambda arrow, that means no need to give the break statements. This break statement, I don't need to give it. Okay. So I use this lambda arrow, and if there is only going to be one code fragment in this case block's body, then I could just give that code fragment right away. But if it is going to be more than one code fragment, then I would need to use the curly braces to give the code fragments that are needed for this case block's body. But at this moment, there is only one code fragment that needs to be given. That's why I can just give it this way. And if you are using the lambda arrow in the switch, it needs to be same for every single case blocks. So you can no longer use those columns since you started with this lambda arrow for the first case block. So that's why it's giving me this compile error at line 13. It says different case kinds used in the switch. You see, every single case's kind needs to be same kind, either with the column or with the lambda arrow. So here I could use the lambda arrow instead. And if I'm using the lambda arrow, I cannot use the break statement. Okay. So ever since Java 14, we didn't need to use the break statement at all in order to terminate the switch. We could just use this lambda arrow. And I also need to do the same for the remaining case blocks. I will delete the break statements and then replace the columns with the lambda arrow. So this column needs to be replaced by the lambda arrow. Okay. Let's also do the same for the case block 5, 6, and 7. This is case block number 5. And this is for case block number 6 and 7. 2 blocks are declared together, which means whenever the given number to the switch statement is 6 or 7, it will just print weekend. Okay. And for the default block, we also need to do the same by using the lambda arrow. So you see, when you use the lambda arrow, if there's only needs to be one code fragment to be executed for that case block, you just give that code fragment right next to this lambda arrow. But what if there is going to be more than one code fragment that needs to be executed for that case block? For example, when this case block gets executed, besides printing Monday, I also would like to print print the number weekday 01. You see, now it's giving me this error. Okay, because without the curly braces, this lambda arrow, it can only carry one statement with it, with this block. Okay, so if you want to give more than one code fragment within the block of this case block, you have to give those code fragments within the curly braces. So this will only apply when you are using the lambda arrow. Okay, so here I can also do the same if there is going to be more than one code fragment within this case block. Every time when there is going to be more than one code fragment within the case block, when you are using this lambda arrow, please use the curly braces to give those code fragments, such as here. Here I could give the number week day 02. Okay. And if you do the format function, you see it will give the case block in this format. And if it is going to be the same for the next case blocks, I can continue to do the same. And here I could give the number weekday number 3. Okay. And let's also repeat the same for 4 and 5. So this is for case block number 4. I could name it weekday number 4. And this one here, I also need more than one code fragments in this case block's body. That's why here I can use the curly braces to define the scope. If you don't define the scope by using curly braces when you are using lambda arrows, by default it will only take one statement. So if you have more than one statement to give for the case block, please use this curly braces to define scope of this case block. Okay. And for the 6 and 7, I don't need to give more than one code fragment, so I could just give it without the curly braces. If I give the curly braces will be in the gray color, because in the lambda prefers the shortest way as possible. Okay. If there is anything unnecessary when you are using lambda, it will just give them in the gray color. Okay. And in this default block also, I don't need to give the curly braces because there is only one code fragment that needs to be executed for this default block. And remember, those curly braces, you will only use it if you are using the lambda arrow instead of the columns for the case blocks. Okay. So if I run the program now, you see it printed Friday, day 05. And if I give any invalid numbers, such as number 8, then it will print invalid number. So this was something new that was introduced in the Java version 14, so which wouldn't allow those lambda arrows before Java version 14. Okay, so those are a couple important details of the switch statement that you should keep in mind. This is what constant means by case value can be constant. And after Java version 14, when you are using the switch, you could use the lambda arrow and then the curly braces to define the scope of the case block. But of course, if there's only one code fragment that you need to give within the scope of the case block, you do not need to give this curly braces. Okay, thank you so much everyone. See you all in the next video.